Hello, I'm Parneet Jaggi. In this lecture, we're going to be looking into a brief analysis of the famous poem by Toru Dutt, Our Casuarina Tree. Our Casuarina Tree is a poem by Dutt in which this tree is both a tree as well as a symbol of homeland and her joyous childhood. The Casuarina tree grew in the courtyard of her Indian house, and her fond childhood memories are associated with it. The poem opens with a description of the tree that is tall enough to make it seem as if it touches the stars and strong enough to continue growing despite the scars on its trunk. And despite all this, it provides support to a creeper. She also gives it the air of a gentleman when she describes how the tree is forever adorned with flowers, birds and bees. Toru Dutt goes on to tell us about the mornings in her childhood when she would wake up to the sight of the Casuarina tree. Come summer or winter, her morning would remain incomplete without the sight of this beautiful, majestic tree, often visited by a baboon, a monkey sitting on its crest watching its children play around. She even paints a serene picture of the morning with the kokilas singing, the cows in the pasture and the water lilies in the spring. However, the figure of the Casuarina tree stands central in this picture, as it does in the morning and evening in the life of the poetess. Now we may infer that in her moments of peace and calm, her memory jogs back to her childhood, which is inextricably linked with the Casuarina tree. And she draws up a mental image of this tree as it existed in its prime in her childhood. Here we notice that the tree is not just an integral part of her childhood and a symbol of her friendship with her companions. It is the only thing which has remained static all this time. All her companions have moved on, have left her, but the tree remains as it is. It is the only thing which stands as a monument to her friendship. Now let's talk about the style of the poem. It consists of 5 stanzas of 11 lines each. The rhyme scheme of the poem is A, B, B, A. The poem, though written in 1881, is written in lucid, plain English and is quite easy to understand. It flows smoothly, is embellished with various poetic devices. There is an abundant use of similes, metaphors, personification and allusion, making it figurative. When we talk of the title of the poem, Our Casuarina Tree refers to the tree that grew in the garden of the poetess, but it is also a fond memory of her distant childhood on which she reminisces. It shows her nostalgia and her unfathomable attachment with Aru and Abju, her brother and sister, and who were also her closest companions and met an untimely early death in her life. When we see the setting of the poem is set when the poetess herself is living abroad somewhere in the coast of France or Italy, but she is reminiscing about her childhood years spent in India and the garden in which the Casuarina tree stands, where she played with her childhood companions. When we look at the tone of the poem, the tone is one of remembrance and reminiscence. She remembers her childhood spent underneath the shade of this tree while she played with her friends. She misses her companions, she misses the tree and her home where she has grown up. Words and phrases like sweet companions, loved with love intense, shall the tree be ever dear, associate with her fond loving memory of cheerful childhood, while other phrases like hot tears blind mine eyes, what is that dirge-like murmur that I hear, like the sea breaking on a shingle beach? It is the tree's lament and eerie speech. These phrases lend an air of pain and pathos to the poem. When we look at the figurative quality and the poetic devices of the poem, we find an abundant use of similes. Although it is an ode, but it is full of similes, and because the tree has been humanized, she uses a number of live similes in the poem to give the effect. For example, in the very beginning of the poem, she says, like a huge python. So this simile highlights the grandeur, the majesty of the tree, the Casuarina tree that stands in her courtyard. Then, like snow enmassed, she uses the simile for the white lily flowers that look like congealed snow. Like the sea breaking, now the tree's vastness and gravity has been compared with that of the sea. The next device used is personification. It is not merely the description of a tree, but the poem is also a tribute to the tree. The poet personifies the tree. She bestows all human feelings to the tree. The tree is shown as having a generous attitude. It comforts all. It also shares the joys and sorrows of human beings. And the poetess feels that the tree sheds tears and laments the death of her brother and sister. But the tree is also destined to die like a human being. Therefore, it has been personified. Now, when we look at the symbolism, the tree, of course, we find is a rich symbol. It is symbolic because it is this tree under which she has played in her childhood. It holds a special place in her heart. So it is not just a part of nature or just a tree or just a living entity, but it is a symbol of her happiness, her companionship, her homeland, a place where she can visit and revisit to get the effect of that happiness again. So this becomes the symbol of her everlasting companionship, and thus it becomes dearer in her eyes even more. To conclude, we find that this poem highlights the tree's contribution in the life of the poetess. It is an inevitable part of her life. Therefore, she shows respect and intends, like we have in the romantic poets, she intends to immortalize this tree through her poetry and verses. On the other hand, she also remembers a brother and sister who died at an early age. Thus, this poem comes out beautifully as an ode in form, but also as an elegy in spirit. Thank you for now.